Shabbat Shalom, everyone. This week's portion, Parashah 53, Haazinu, here is in Deuteronomy chapter 32. I'll give everyone a chance to get turned there. This is the Song of Moses. Hear, O heavens, as I speak. Listen, earth, to the words from my mouth. May my teaching fall like rain. May my speech condense like dew, like light rain on blades of grass, or showers on growing plants. For I will proclaim the name of Adonai. Come, declare the greatness of our God, the rock. His work is perfect, for all his ways are just. A trustworthy God who does no wrong. He is righteous and straight. He is not corrupt. The defect is in his children, a crooked and perverted generation. You foolish people, so lacking in wisdom, is this how you repay Adonai? He is your father, who made you his. It was he who formed and prepared you. Remember how the old days were. Think of the years through all the ages. Ask your father, he will tell you. Your leaders too, they will inform you. When Elyon gave each nation its heritage, when he divided the human race, he assigned the boundaries of peoples according to Israel's population. But Adonai's share was his own people, Yaakov his allotted heritage. He found his people in desert country, in a howling, wasted wilderness. He protected him and cared for him, guarded him like the pupil of his eye, like an eagle that stirs up her nest, hovers over her young, spreads out her wings, takes them and carries them as she flies. Adonai alone led his people. No alien god was with him. He made them ride on the heights of the earth. They ate the produce of the fields. He had them suck honey from the rocks and olive oil from the crags, curds from the cows and milk from the sheep, with lamb fat, rams from Bashan, and goats with the finest wheat flour. And you drank sparkling wine from the blood of grapes. But Yeshurun grew fat and kicked. He abandoned God, his maker. He scorned the rock, his salvation. They roused him to jealousy with alien gods, provoked him with abominations. They sacrificed to demons, non-gods, gods they had never known, new gods that had come up lately, which your ancestors had not feared. You ignored the rock who fathered you. You forgot God who gave you birth. Adonai saw and was filled with scorn at his sons' and daughters' provocation. He said, I will hide my face from them and see what will become of them. For they are a perverse generation, untrustworthy children. They aroused my jealousy with a non-god and provoked me with their vanities. I will arouse their jealousy with a non-people and provoke them with a vile nation. For my anger has been fired up. It burns to the depths of Sheol, devouring the earth and its crops, kindling the very roots of the hills. I will heap disasters upon them and use up all my arrows against them. Fatigued by hunger, they will be consumed by fever and bitter defeat. I will send them the fangs of wild beasts and the poison of reptiles crawling in the dust. Outside, the sword makes parents childless. Inside, there is panic, as young men and girls alike are slain, sucklings and graybeards together. I considered putting an end to them, erasing their memory from the human race. But I feared the insolence of their enemy, feared that their foes would mistakenly think, we ourselves have accomplished this. Adonai had nothing to do with it. They are a nation without common sense, utterly lacking in discernment. If they were wise, they could figure it out and understand their destiny. After all, how can one chase 1,000 and two put 10,000 to rout unless their rock sells them to their enemies, unless Adonai hands them over? For our enemies have no rock like our rock. Even they can see that. Rather, their vine is from the vine of Sodom, from the fields of Amorah. Their grapes are poisonous, their clusters are bitter, their wine is snake poison, the cruel venom of vipers. Isn't this hidden with me, sealed in my storehouses? Vengeance and payback are mine for the time when their foot slips, for the day of their calamity is coming soon, their doom is rushing upon them. Yes, Adonai will judge his people, taking pity on his servants, when he sees that their strength is gone, that no one is left, slave or free. Then he will ask, where are their gods, the rock in whom they trusted? Who ate the fat of their sacrifices and drank the wine of their drink offering? Let him get up and help you. Let him protect you. See now that I, yes, I am he, and there is no God beside me. I put to death and I make alive. I wound and I heal. No one saves anyone from my hand. For I lift up my hand to the heaven and swear, as surely as I live forever, if I sharpen my flashing sword and set my hand to judgment, I will render vengeance to my foes, repay those who hate me. I will make my arrows drunk with blood. My sword will devour flesh, the blood of the slain and the captives, flesh from the wild-haired heads of the enemy. Sing out, you nations, about his people, for he will avenge the blood of his servants. He will render vengeance to his adversaries and make atonement for the land of his people. Moshe came and proclaimed all the words of this song in the hearing of the people and of Hoshea, the son of Nun. When he had finished speaking all these words to Israel, he said to them, "Take to heart all the words of my testimony against you today, so that you can use them in charging your children to be careful to obey all the words of this Torah. For this is not a trivial matter for you. On the contrary, it is your life. Through it, you will live long in the land you are crossing the Jordan to possess." That same day, Adonai said to Moshe, "Go up to the Avarim range, to Mount Nebo in the land of Moab, across from Jericho, and look out over the land of Canaan, which I am giving the people of Israel as a possession. On the mountain you are ascending, you will die and be gathered to your people, just as Aharon your brother died on Mount Hor and was gathered to his people. The reason for this is that both of you broke faith with me there among the people of Israel at Mirvat Kadesh spring in the Sin desert. You failed to demonstrate my holiness there among the people of Israel. So you will see the land from a distance, but you will not enter the land I am giving to the people of Israel." Amen.
A vengeful God, and not like what is taught today in some places that he forgives everything and looks the other way. This song was given 3,400 years ago and exists till today, and it shows a different side of it, and it'll be applicable to the end times. Some folks have thought of the Song of Moses as reminiscent of a father that's speaking to a rebellious son. And in that way, I agree with that in a way, and I see some parallels with the parable of the prodigal son in this comparison. The prodigal son is the young one who went to his father and wanted his inheritance, as you know. Who knows how that exchange took place? Maybe he went into his father and he says, this just isn't for me. It's not my way. I don't like this way of life. I don't want to follow the life that you are leading me down. So let me have my inheritance, whatever it is you've put aside for me, and let me go. Or he might have been a smoother talker and said something like, I honor you, Father, and I know that you love your way of life and you want a good life for me, but I just don't think that this is for me. So give me my inheritance. And I can see the older brother maybe standing by his father saying, he's just going to blow it. Don't give him anything, he's just going to blow it. But the father gives him the inheritance and lets him go. Now, I don't think the father just let him go without talking to him. I think he probably sat him down at some point and said, this is not the way to go. You haven't got your values in the right place, and you don't know how to handle decision making and whatever those things are that we talk to our kids about as parents when they're young and they're bucking against the authority that they're under. And they want to set out on their own and make their own way, make their own decisions. He probably talked to him like that. And the son, yeah. But what about it? Can you let me have the money? Can I go? So he let him go. And this is kind of like Israel, the father in Israel. He's telling Israel through this song that you're going to do some things that are going to get you in trouble. And when you do, you're going to suffer consequences. And so you have a choice. So the story goes that he does wake up one day and realize that he's done a big mistake. And he comes back. He's had a change of mind and a change of character as well. I don't know whether that is something that is in the Song of Moses, but I do know that the Father offers some hope at the end of the Song of Moses, and that the land will be redeemed. And we know from writing previous that when they get to that place in a foreign country or in their walk with God where they are suffering and they return to him, that he will accept them. And in that way, the prodigal son was fortunate. His father continued to love him and watched for him daily. And when the time came that he finally came to his senses, and I think his father realized he would, that he would suffer what he had to suffer, and then that he would come back. He saw him down the road, and he ran to greet him. So there's some of that in the Song of Moses. So here is Israel encamped on the plains of Moab. It's been 40 years plus since their departure from Egypt. The first generation of men that had been denied entrance into the promised land because of rebellion were all gone. In about 70 days, they would cross the Jordan with their new leader, Yehoshua, to begin taking possession of the land that God had promised them, promised to their ancestors, and continued in that promise to this time, brought them to this place. Moshe is reviewing their days together, refreshing their memories regarding the covenant Jehovah had made with them at Sinai, leading them into covenant with Jehovah here in the plains of Moab, so that God can establish you today for himself as a people, and so that for you he will be God, as he said to you and as he swore to your ancestors, to Abraham, Yitzhak, and Yaakov. So they are there in fulfillment of a covenant that he made with their ancestors long ago. Abraham renewed it with Yitzhak and Yaakov, and here they are. Both back up. But there is a lot of history. The children of Israel have not always proven themselves to be consistently obedient or trusting of their God. Even though they had witnessed miracles, signs, and wonders, they grumbled in hardships, were susceptible to envy and jealousy, a burden to Moses because of their complaints and their fears, and a provocation to Yahweh because of their lack of trust. Both Yehovah and Moshe could see the constant cycle of disobedience. Moshe had experienced it in his years with them, of having to be disciplined, a period of harmony with God, and then the falling away again that would happen in the future, and a constant cycle of up and down with the Father. In every case, it involved some kind of chastisement, some kind of punishment that they would have to endure. This song should have been a warning to them as those things were happening, that it would happen, that it was prophesied that they were that kind of people, and that it would happen. And it should have acted as a warning to them to be careful. Don't make these mistakes that you're getting ready to make them. But for some reason within us is this prone to wandering. And so we make these mistakes anyway. Yahweh spoke to Moshe about it and commanded him to write a song. He, Yehovah, prophecy, put to music, and that it would be easily remembered through every generation, so that it would be easily remembered. If you've ever, remember back to the grade school days when you were taught something, put in memory, and they did it to a song, you can probably sing that song today, word for word, without a problem at all. And so they were a verbal people. They talked. They didn't write. They probably had tremendous memories, better than ours today. Their history, their family lineage, everything was committed to memory. And some of that was with song. And so he asked him to make that song, take the prophecy that God was making here in Deuteronomy, put it to song so that they will have it. His prophecy put to music so that it could be easily remembered through every generation, and after some 3,400 years, it is still with us. It is a prophecy, a warning, and an accuser, not just for those standing before Moshe on the plains of Moab, but for future generations and for all people. It was one more tool for the people, along with the 10 words, the sacrificial system, the statutes, the blessings and curses, all designed to help them live rightly before their God and live long in the land. So a lead up to the song is Deuteronomy 31, and I'd like to read from verse 16 through 24 and 24 through 30. It kind of drives home this thought that Yahweh and Moses were talking about the people together, that they'd come up with this plan and the whys for it. So 31:16. Yahweh said to Moshe, "You are about to sleep with your ancestors, but this people will get up and offer themselves as prostitutes to the foreign gods of the land where they are going. When they are with those gods, they will abandon me and break my covenant which I have made with them. Then my anger will flare up, and I will abandon them and hide my face from them. They will be devoured, and many calamities and troubles will come upon them. Then they will ask, 'Haven't these calamities come upon us because our God isn't here with us?' But I will be hiding my face from them because of the evil that they will have done in turning to other gods. Therefore, write this song for yourselves and teach it to the people of Israel. Have them learn it by heart so that this song can be a witness for me against the people of Israel. For when I have brought them into the land that I swore to their ancestors, flowing with milk and honey, and they have eaten their fill, grown fat, and turned to other gods, serving them and despising me, and broken my covenant, then after many calamities and troubles have come upon them, this song will testify before them as a witness, because their descendants will still be reciting it and will not have forgotten. For I know how they think even now, before I have brought them into the land about which I swore." So Moshe wrote this song that same day and taught it to the people of Israel. That's God's statement to Moshe. Down in verse, I will just take it from 23. 24. Moshe kept writing the words of this Torah in a book until he was done. When he had finished, Moshe gave these orders to the Leviim who carried the ark with the covenant of Yahweh. "Take this book of the Torah and put it next to the ark with the covenant of Jehovah your God, so that it can be there to witness against you. For I know how rebellious and stiff-necked you are. Here, even while I am still alive with you today, you have rebelled against Yahweh. So how much more will you do so after death? Assemble for me all the leaders of your tribes and your officials, so that I can say these things in their hearing, calling on heaven and earth to witness against them, because I know that after my death, you will become very corrupt and turn aside from the way that I have ordered you, and that disaster will come upon you in the Acharit Hayamim, the end times, because you will do what Adonai sees as evil and provoke him by your deeds." Then Moshe spoke in the hearing of the assembly of Israel the words of this song from beginning to end. So here you have God's assessment of the situation and his solution, and you have Moshe confirming it to the people, telling them that this is how God sees it, that's how he sees it, and here's the song. So I try to write it in a way that helps me to understand it, what might be being said. In the first verse, "Hear, O heavens, as I speak, listen, earth, to the words from my mouth. May my teaching fall like rain, may my speech condense like dew, like light rain on blades of grass or showers on growing plants. This grass, these growing plants, maybe they're the people before Moshe right now. And that the speech that he is going to give them, that it will be wisdom for them, and it will nurture them. The call to heaven and earth, 2 witnesses needed to establish a matter. The matter in this case is the truth of God's prophecy about Israel, given through the Song of Moses, to be a witness for them, for him against them. In verse 3 through 4, there is a praise, a reminder to the people, a proclamation to the people, who God is. Adonai, Yehovah, is lifted up. The people are exhorted to acknowledge his greatness. His name, Yehovah, speaks of his attributes and his character. He is the rock, strong and immovable. What he does is perfect. He is just. He is trustworthy. He does no wrong. He makes no mistakes. He is righteous and he is straight. He is not corrupt. He is pure. Where there is an imperfection, where there is untrustworthiness, injustice, and wrongdoing, the defect is in his children. You, who I am speaking to you, and those in the future. That's what I imagine Moshe was saying. He is talking not just to these folks that are right before him, but he's talking to future generations as well. And he's making it very clear that God has set out a path that is right and true. If there is a problem, if they fail in this, it's not his doing, it is their doing. They have this power to fail, to not listen. You, he says, continuing now in 5 and 7, are the crooked ones, not what you were created to be. It is something of your own doing. You lack wisdom because in your foolishness you reject it. Is this the way to be with the Father who created you to be his very own? Do this. Contemplate history. Ask your fathers and elders about the ages and generations gone by. Yehovah created all that is by the power of his word. Out of the dust of the earth with the breath of God, man was formed and given being, a mind, a will, freedom to choose and the potential to be like his Father or to choose a way of his own. He divided the people into nations and assigned them each territory. He did so, and in such a way as to allow for a land of promise and a people of promise chosen by him out of the nations of the earth so that they could be set apart for him, a holy priesthood. He came forth to meet them, was present with them, his people, in the wilderness. He provided for them there, and there he guarded them closely. He did. No other God was with him alone. He brought them to a good land, a land flowing with milk and honey, a land of abundance and variety, and there was no want for food or drink. Life was good. But Israel became prosperous, comfortable, complacent, and rebellious. He, Israel, was not faithful or attentive to his rock, who had guarded over him, who was his salvation. He credited his prosperity and well-being to his own strength and wisdom. His mind and heart began to turn away, to abandon God. They, Moses is talking about them in the future, and you, he's talking to them directly, saw it and were offended and filled with, They and you ignored and forgot the Father, the God who fathered you and gave you birth. God saw it and was offended. and filled with scorn by their provocation. I will back away from them, withdraw my favor, leave them to their own devices. For their perversions and untrustworthiness, I will do this. And then we'll see what happens. Yes, I am angry with a deep and consuming anger. Just as they made me jealous with a non-God, so I will make them jealous with a non-people, a people not mine. They will suffer hunger, fatigue, and sickness, be plagued by wild animals. Violence and war will take their children. None will be spared, young or old. It will be intentional harm. I will bring about intentional harm upon these people as a chastisement, as a punishment, to bring them back, hopefully, into line, to return them to me. I thought about it, but did not put an end to them. Their foes, those I sent to punish them, must understand that I am God over all. There are no boundaries for me. I move one nation against another as I will. It is I who brings defeat and harm to my people, not the enemy. I think God's main concern in his relationship with his people is for his glory. He created us in love, and it is our purpose to be in fellowship with him, to be loved by him, and to love him in return. I think this is something that he wanted, and I think he created us to want it too. But more than that, his glory is what concerns him most. He is the great God of all. There was nothing before him, and he brought everything into existence. He created people, human beings, to be able to recognize that if they put their mind to it, to appreciate it, to fear him for it, but to love him for it as well. And to not look to glorify themselves, but to glorify him. He is jealous of his glory. He shares it with no one. And so this is a concern that that the enemies might think that they were the ones who brought Israel to their knees. And that's not what he wanted that's not the message that he wanted to send. Israel's foes were self-deceived. They would think that they had brought this about, that they were victorious over Israel because of their great power and strength, and that nothing else was involved. If they were self-deceived, and they had no discernment or common sense, no wisdom. If they did, they would understand from what they already knew. No one defeats Israel unless Jehovah enables them to do it. And once Jehovah has dealt with his own, he will deal with those he used against his people, and their fate will be worse. So there is a history of things that were going on with Israel where they were able to go to war and be victorious, and God would make them victorious. And the nations knew that. It wasn't hidden from them, thinking in terms of the timeline, not just in the wilderness, where they were able to defeat the Amalekites, where they were able to, just before entering into the land, defeat Sichon and Og, take their land and their cities. God was with them, and they were able to do that sort of thing. They were living in obedience to his ways, and so they were able to defeat them. And it should have occurred to the enemies that came against them later on, Persia and Babylon, that they can't be successful against Israel unless God has already given Israel up. And that should have made them cautious. That should have made them think, do I really want to get involved in this? But it didn't. Their destiny would be bitter calamity, those of the oppressors. It will come quickly as God gets revenge from them for their treatment of his people. It was God's habit, it was his method to use enemies against his people, to chastise them, and then turn around and punish the enemies for what they had done to his people. It's kind of reminiscent of the quandary that David was in when he had the opportunity to kill King Saul, but he didn't. King Saul was God's anointed, and so he held his hand. That's the way these enemies should have thought. These people belong to a God that is greater than all gods. We should not worry with them. But they didn't, and so they were going to suffer. Their destiny was going to be bitter, and it would come quickly, and it would be an act of revenge on God's part for their treatment of his people. God will finally judge his people, take pity on them, on seeing them broken, defeated, and weak. And that was always his way. His people would get into trouble. They would cry out to him. He would hear their cries, and then he would go in and he would rescue them. You see that in the Judges. You see that as a way of dealing with his people with the prophets, giving them a word, sending them to talk to the people so that they can change the way that they were going. And when he finally does judge his people, takes pity on them, seeing them in that broken and defeated and weak condition, he will inquire after those other gods of theirs that they abandoned him for. They should help and protect them. Oh, but that's right. They're not gods after all. I am the one who helps and protects, puts to death and makes alive, wounds and heals. No one saves anyone from my hand. For I lift up my hand to heaven and swear. And what Jehovah says he will do, he will do. So his warning to the enemies is, be careful, because he will take vengeance on his people's foes, on his foes, the enemies of his people. And at that point, there will be no mercy. He tells the nations, know God's people, know them, and of his love for them. Understand he will take vengeance on those who persecute them. With the blood of the enemy, he will make atonement for the land of his people. It's an interesting thought that the blood of the enemy atones for the land. The sin that was committed on that land, the attacks of the enemy, the land never prospered in the absence of Israel. It always went fallow, it always was a wasteland. But with the presence of Israel, it blooms. And maybe that's one of the issues with the enemy. They come in, they displace Israel from the land, they try to make it profitable, and it doesn't work for them. But when Israel comes back, and they will come back, they will flourish again, and we've seen that. Prophesied that they would. He would gather them from the east and the west, the north and the south, and he'd bring them back to the land. When they got into that place, in foreign places, where they realized that because of the presence of the Song of Moshe, they could look and say, here we are, in a foreign land, worshiping foreign gods, enslaved to them. It's here in the Song of Moshe. It tells that this would happen, and it has happened. So that explains it. What to do? Well, return to your father. Seek him diligently. Whether it was those folks that were standing there in Moab, just a river crossing away from the promised land, or years later, after those people had died off and a new generation had come and started wandering, when they read the Song of Moshe, they should have thought, that looks a lot like our nation right now. We're going through those problems. And all that's going to end in a catastrophe for us in this country that we live in right now. We can read the Song of Moshe, and we can be warned about the direction that we're going. God's word has been twisted. God's word has been banned. His people are persecuted, not to the extent that they are in other countries, but nevertheless, something that we're not used to. We're more sensitive to verbal persecutions and attacks on us to make us look bad and that sort of thing. In other countries, it's an attack on their lives. So we see these things going on, and we read in the Song of Moshe that these things were prophesied. Okay, these things are happening again. What to do? Well, Moshe started out the Song of Moses with a declaration. He extolled all of the attributes of God. And in the scriptures, it talks to us about proclaiming the word. That within the word is the power to touch people, make changes. Not to everybody. Everybody won't respond. Or at least they won't respond right away, but some will. And that'll be a change. Proclaim his name, teach his ways, and by that you will have demonstrated your love for him. I guess maybe some kind of a conclusion to this is that it was meant for all time. In Revelation, we'll see the Song of the Lamb and the Song of Moshe being sung by the ones who defeated the beast and his number and his name. And that'll be at a time when the word has gone out to all the world, not just the Hebrews, the Jews, but the Gentiles as well. And so this song will be appropriate. They can stand on the shoreline singing that song and say, "You are just and true." Let me go to it. I saw what looked like a sea of glass mixed with fire. Those defeating the beast, its image, and the number of its name were standing by the sea of glass. Holding harps which God had given them, they were singing the song of Moshe, the servant of God, and the song of the Lamb. Great and wonderful are the things you have done, God of heaven's armies. Just and true are your ways, King of the nations. Adonai, who will not fear and glorify your name? Because you alone are holy. All nations will come and worship before you, for your righteous deeds have been revealed. We have an awesome God. We do live under the shadow of his wings. He is our home. Everything that he has given us in the way of warnings, in the way of instructions, is designed to make us better, to make it possible for us to be successful in being righteous before him. Nothing that he has given us is meant for our destruction. It is out of love. He's jealous of his own glory. And if we want to please him, we can do those things that will bring glory to him. But he glorifies us as well. He makes a dwelling place for us in heaven. He's going to come and bring us to himself. We can use that song in all ages, whether it's the people that were standing on the shore, the ones coming later, or the ones even farther beyond that, as a warning and a guide. It definitely says that some things are going to happen, and they did. But prophecy is repetitive, and it can happen again and again and again. Only from our vantage point, this side of the cross, we are able to not nullify, but it's not a sure thing that we will be destroyed because of the things we do. Under the blood of Christ, we are continually washed. We are continually sinless and righteous before God, the righteousness of Yeshua. And so if we repent, if we listen to things like, if we commit to our heart, write it on our hearts, the moral code, the 10 commandments that he gave us to live by, that were his covenant with us. If we listen to and take heed of the blessings and the curses, if we learn from the statutes that are given in the Old Testament, that are like what a teacher of mine calls case studies, things that set precedents or establish that in certain situations you do certain things, and all of these things are tied back into the 10 words that God gave, so that in principle you're doing the right thing, even though it may not match what they did then. Our society is different. If we listen to if we listen to the prophets, and we take a lesson from the Hebrew people, at that time when God consistently sent prophets, his servants, to minister to these people, to warn them, to bring them back into fellowship with them. If we see what happened when they didn't obey, we think to ourselves, now, here I am. Am I going to obey, or am I going to go my own merry way? The book, we're looking from this side all the way back down through history of man, and we can see all the mistakes that they made. Do we have the wisdom to learn from their mistakes and their successes? Do we have the sensitivity? Is it in us to understand that this is important? As Moshe said, this is your life. To understand the gravity of that. It's not all about knowledge and theology and everything. It's just a matter of applying God's word, loving him, loving your fellow man, and doing it in the context of the scriptures. Scriptures show us the right way to do that. So all of this is in our hands. We're going to have the least amount of excuses for any failings that we make, because we've been given the instructions, and we've got the example of eons of people that have come before us. We don't have an excuse. But God, he's a loving God. He's merciful, he's kind, he's gentle. Take my yoke upon you. My burden is easy. My burden is light. And in the end, it really is, if you love him, as you know from your own experiences with love, when you love somebody, you have courage. You don't back down. You're there. You protect them. So what's the issue? Do we love God or not? I'm starting to ramble. I think that's going to be it for me. One reminder, or one, you know, Monday is Yom Kippur, and Day of Atonement, a somber and solemn day. Some years ago, a friend of mine said, "Why are you so somber? Why are you so solemn? You have everything to be happy about and rejoice about. There is no more sacrificial system. There is no more covering up but not taking away sin. You are saved. You are free. When this day comes by, if you're going to be somber, if you're going to be solemn, well, maybe there's some justification for that. Because your freedom, your joy that you have now, your assurance, came at a very heavy price. The life of God's Son. And it was in a horrible way. And I think sometimes that when it says to afflict your souls, that it means to afflict your inner man. There's plenty of things in there that say to fast. And I think it's appropriate we fast. But we should also afflict our souls, that inner man, in the knowledge of the price that had to be paid. And I'm not sure in my own life that I feel the sense of guilt and remorse and gratitude, really, that I should have for that, so that it would actually make me feel bad or afflicted. Maybe if I had been there when they took him prisoner, when they beat him, when they pulled at his beard, maybe if I'd been there when they pushed the thorn of crowns down on his head or scourged him, made him carry that beam. Maybe if I'd been there watching him stumble on the stone path to Golgotha. Maybe if I had seen as they drove the nails through his hands and his feet, lifted up that cross and dropped it into the ground. Maybe if I'd been there and watched him as he struggled to breathe, listened as he gave instructions for the care of his mother, listened as he cried out to his Father to please forgive these people. They just don't know what they're doing. Maybe if I'd been there and heard him cry out, and what do you think it sounded like? What was the tone of his voice to the Father? Like, where are you, my Father? Come rescue me. Maybe if I'd been there for that, I could go into a day like Yom Kippur and feel really afflicted. I get moments of remorse, I guess, and I get moments like that. I've cried before the Lord, so I'm hoping that I'm not completely hard-hearted. When that day comes, I do want to afflict my conscience, my soul, because he's worthy. He's worthy of that. He's worthy of our praise. We just have no idea. I pray to the Spirit of God within us all to make us understand the gravity of this of all this, the importance of it. Just give us a chance to, and guide us in a path where not only are we concerned about ourselves, but we're concerned about other people as well. So when that day comes, pray, fast. A friend of mine said fasting always helped him to clear his mind, to be able to see spiritually in a way that he couldn't when other things were on his mind, like food. Another friend of mine said that, well, there's every reason to be joyful. In Isaiah, it speaks of it. And I'll read that, and that'll be it. Isaiah 58. I love that chapter. And they're talking about fasting. He's talking to the people that think they know what fasting is all about. Here's my answer. When you fast, you'll go about doing whatever you like while keeping your laborers hard at work. Your fasts lead to quarreling and fighting, to lashing with blows, with violent blows. On a day like today, fasting like yours will not make your voice heard on high. Is this the sort of fast that I want? A day when a person mortifies himself? Is the object to hang your head like a reed and spread sackcloth and ashes under yourself? Is this what you call a fast, a day that pleases Adonai? Here is the sort of fast I want. Releasing those unjustly bound, untying the tongues of the yoke, letting the oppressed go free, breaking every yoke, sharing your food with the hungry, taking the homeless poor into your house, clothing the naked when you see them, fulfilling your duty to your kinsmen. Then your light will burst forth like the morning. Your new skin will quickly grow over your wound. Your righteousness will precede you, and Yahweh's glory will follow you. Then you will call, and Jehovah will answer. You will cry, and he will say, here I am. That's a fast. That's a fast that we can pray that we have the nature to take joy in. That Yom Kippur is not just a day, it's a bittersweet thing, as are all things, I think, with God. There's a joyful side and a painful side. It's a bittersweet side. There is joy in that you have the time now, unfettered by anything, to go out and to minister to people, to be a blessing. And you also have the time to dwell on the one who suffered for us and the pain that he went through. It's a joyful and a somber thing.
For more teaching and information, visit us online today. Come and be a part of our fellowship. Here at The Seed, enjoy worshiping and learning God's Word with us.